Whenever you cross the border, a security person behind the counter often asks, business or pleasure? Isn't that strange? Like it's one or the other, not both at the same time. Think of it. If you answered both, then you might just be inviting further scrutiny. Are you an actor for business or pleasure? Can it be both? Being a creative person, it is often a challenge to your business abilities, while the fun part is less important if you can't pay the rent. On today's episode, we'll explore the answers and we'll give some answers when asked business or pleasure. Welcome to Casting Actors Cast, the podcast for actors.
It's time for another episode of Casting Actors Cast, insights for actors from a casting director. Each week, we show you how to advance your talent and your career with practical tips, advice, and positivity. Here he is, your host, Jeffrey Dreisbach.
Well, hello and welcome to today's episode of Casting Actors Cast. How are you? I'm Jeffrey Dreisbach. I'm a casting partner at McCorkle Casting in New York. Thank you so very much for joining us today. And thank you to those of you who've left reviews, have subscribed, given me a thumbs up. For those of you who filled out the form that says dive into the talent pool, you'll find that form, by the way, on the website, castingactorscast.com. That's castingactorscast, all one word, .com. There's a form right on the landing page that says dive into the talent pool. And when you fill that out, it just gives me your name and your email address. You can also ask me a question, leave a comment, whatever you want. But when you fill that out and submit it, it opens up some additional freebies for you. These are absolutely free of charge. My gift to you just for tuning in. One is a book that I wrote called Conversation Pieces Out of the Studio, the voiceover workshop for professional actors. It's a 100-page PDF that you're going to find about doing voice work. The second is a free video called Casting Secrets, What They Don't Tell You. But guess what? I'm going to tell you in this free 20-minute video. Additionally, on the website, you're going to find Jeff's Jots, my blog, but the blog corresponds to each of the corresponding episodes of the podios, the podcast videos. So feel free to jump in and check that out. Also, if you haven't looked at me on YouTube, come on, check me out on YouTube. Sometimes people get a little bit, I don't know, they seem to feel like there's more information provided. YouTube is not sort of the goal, but if you want to kind of watch me do the podcast, I do this as a simulcast, then by all means, why don't you consider doing that as well? So thank you very much for all of that. Let's talk about the subject today. Oh, I forgot my shameless promotional announcement about Actors Connection. You know what? Actors Connection has been around for a long time. If you haven't checked out actorsconnection.com/New York, I invite you to do so. There are so many interesting workshops, classes, and seminars taking place. These are all virtual, so you can be anywhere in the world and you can tune in on these classes taught by professionals in the industry. These are working professionals who are giving of their time and their talent to share information about what it is to be a professional. And so I invite you to check out actorsconnection.com. I recommend them highly. I'm also lucky enough to be invited to teach there on occasion. And so it would be awesome to have you come on in and check out one of my classes. It would be great to have you there. actorsconnection.com/New York. So let's talk about this business or pleasure thing. So I know that there are a lot of listeners and viewers of the podios, the podcast videos that are very professional, and they really enjoy the podcast because I'm really talking about current situations. I'm really talking about the challenges of professional acting. And that's what my focus has been. But you know what? I realize that there's a whole audience out there that might just love acting, and they're doing it strictly for pleasure. Now, that could be if you are doing some local theater work. Maybe there's a community theater, or maybe there is a group of you that get together, or maybe occasionally you are available and you do a professional gig at a regional theater, something like that. Those are all really fantastic opportunities for folks. And so for the love of it, people might love to just, I'm going to get involved in a summer theater project, or I'm going to get involved in a local community theater or a community college production. So those are all really excellent choices for you as well. And so I don't want to leave anybody out when we talk about this. But most of the time, in my experience, that's done for pleasure. That's done because you're talented and you want to get your talent out there and you want the experience of being on stage and acting a role. Not only is there nothing wrong with that, is that's very, very cool that you have that available to you. And if you're interested in acting and you haven't taken advantage of that, that might be something to start with. That might be a place where you can launch your work. See what it is to being an actor on stage, for example, at your local community theater, community college, or a local play acting group. What's great about the pleasure part of being an actor is that you're not dependent on having a personal survival issue. You don't have to necessarily worry about rent or food or clothing or some of those survival things. Generally speaking, those actors that just have the love of acting, they'll probably, more often than not, they'll have a full-time job, or they'll have something that's bringing them some income, and they can have a family, they can have a life, and then on occasion they'll go out and do a theater gig because they love it so much. You know, that's kind of reassuring, right? That's kind of rewarding if you're that person, and I admire that very, very much. And additionally, there's multiple avenues for your creativity when you're doing acting for pleasure. You can also have life. You can have a life. You can literally have family. You can be involved in work. You can have great relationships. There's all kinds of positive reasons why having the pleasure part of acting be at the forefront of your decision-making process. Also, you should know that when you are choosing to act just for the pleasure, just for the fun of it, performance pressure is manageable. You're not necessarily dependent on getting great reviews. Think about that. Maybe it doesn't matter that much how much you are looking to have career advancement. So the performance pressure of you in that environment is very, very manageable. Now, let's flip that. Let's talk about the actors who are in it for the business side, in it to make money, in it to make a living as an actor. And these are the actors that I speak to most of the time when I'm doing my podcast, and I'm aware of that. But we have to really analyze and take a look at those actors who are in it strictly for a career objective. Many times I find that actors take acting jobs without any regard to career development. They don't necessarily think that the job that they're taking is something that's going to advance their career. They're taking the job because it is a paying gig. Now, you might disagree with me about this, and I'm probably not going to get a lot of happy folks about this, but there's something to be said about career development and not just taking a job because it pays. And I can speak to this firsthand. That was certainly when I first started acting, and I was an actor for 20 years before I moved into casting. But I said yes to every first job that came along. And it didn't matter, right? It didn't matter if they needed a tap dancer in Sheboygan. I said yes. And so saying yes to everything often felt like I was compromising myself, but yet the need to perform seemed so much greater than me taking a moment, taking a breath, and really thinking about my career. Career development is really important to take a look at, especially when starting out. Just simply saying yes to every job just to get your foot in the door is not necessarily the best strategy, because it doesn't really, oftentimes it won't ultimately feed your creative side. It won't really feed that satisfying urge to perform because you are feeling compromised because you just said yes because you want to work. You just want to be a working actor. That mindset, although might seem right for you at the time, my suggestion is to take a breath and think about it. Also, what's challenging for actors who are in it for the business part of being an actor, it feels temporary because the business is always evolving. There's always a show that closes. There's always a period of time where you're now looking for work and auditioning rather than being comfortable in a long run of a show, for example. Even a television series or a feature film, as rewarding as that experience is, eventually the production shuts down. Eventually the show closes. So that temporary feeling can sometimes really drag you down and put you in a different headspace. And because it feels temporary and because the business is always evolving, it's quite important that you have a healthy perspective on those jobs. A pressured environment, acting for business, it's just difficult. Because there's always this pressure that, gosh, I haven't worked in a while, and so I haven't gotten any great auditions, or it's been a while since I've gotten a call back, or whatever the journey that you're on is. Acting for business and pleasure is something that I would ask you to take a look at. So acting for business and pleasure is the goal, I think, for most creatives to really think about and embrace. Because first of all, you have a nice balance of your creativity and your career. They can happen simultaneously. It's not just you're doing it for fun, but you're getting your creative juices flowing, but you can also analyze each of those opportunities that you get and make them work for you in a strategic career plan. Oftentimes, it allows other areas of personal development when you are acting for both business and for pleasure. It's really true that there are many times actors find out about additional opportunities that are out there that are related to show business, but not necessarily directly related to show business. There are other areas of your life that get improved when you have the healthy balance between the love of performing and understanding the business of performing, because the business is simply all about money. It's all about career, that objective and that energy and that focus. While you have to understand acting itself is the service that you provide. What you're providing is a service. You are in service of the project. You're fulfilling the vision of whatever that project is all about. And so having a healthy perspective about pleasure and business is, I think, the best way to proceed. Now, there are definitely issues with both business and pleasure acting. One is that it's always fluid. There's more money, is often less fulfilling. For example, I know actors who say to me, I'm not going to do that lead in that regional theater, even though it would be a great part for me, because if I stay in town, I might get an episode as a day player on a show that's shooting in New York. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, there's logic there that you could get paid and you could get some television exposure, I guess, on that television show, being a day player. On the other hand, where's the career development? When you could be playing a lead in a regional theater that really does have some fulfilling aspects beyond the coin purse, beyond the money that you make being a day player in a national television show. So finding that balance, and know that it's always going to feel fluid. It's always going to feel like money. The money gigs are oftentimes just simply less fulfilling. Let's move on from there. Actors must be in a constant decision-making mode. So when you are in for business and for pleasure, there are always a constant challenges and constant decisions that you need to make. For every audition that you do, you have to at least spend some time in your head about whether that job is going to be good for you or not. Many times actors will show up to the audition that's given them without the intention of really taking the job if it were offered. I'm always surprised by that. Getting as much information about a project that you are asked to audition for is very, very important. And frankly, I would just as soon that you don't take the audition if you're not available to do the job. But my original point is that actors must be in a constant decision-making mode. Now, that's when an agent or a manager or a trusted colleague can be a really good sounding board for you in that situation. But please make sure that you embrace the fact that it's always fluid. It's always going to be a decision that you have to make all the time. Sometimes the role is usually better than the money. Sometimes, like doing a lead in a regional theater production, sometimes can be much more fulfilling, but we both know that regional theaters don't pay as well as a television show. So it's very true that sometimes, but a lot of the time, the role is often better than the money, and that's what part of that decision making has to come into play. So, what category do you find yourself in? Are you an actor for the potential financial rewards? Or is your love of acting more important than other choices you might be interested in? See, that's the question. And I hope that maybe some information you've heard from me today is useful, is something that you can really spend a moment or two thinking about. As long as you maintain a healthy perspective and embrace the challenges that a professional career might have, understand it can be both. It can be both business and it can be both a pleasure. So having a healthy perspective about each of those arenas will help you and motivate you towards making the better decisions for yourself as you move forward throughout your career. Hey, listen, if you found this useful to you, if you found this episode helpful for you, I would love to hear back from you. Would you like to hear more episodes about this kind of thing? Are these supportive enough for you? And if you have any questions, if you have any feedback, I would love to hear from you. By the way, the email address is castingactorscast, all one word, @gmail.com. And again, the web address, castingactorscast.com. I'm Jeffrey Dreisbach. Thank you for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining Casting Actors Cast. Please don't forget to review, like, and share Casting Actors Cast wherever you get your podcast videos. Thanks. I'm Megan Grace Martinez.